range of backgrounds and skills and approaches here, and this is, I think, just scratching the surface. I'm just curious. I have one quick question. I definitely want to open it up to the room here very quickly, but I just want to know, on this panel, who here would call themselves a journalist? Okay, so Alistair, why not?
I don't know if this, okay. I wouldn't necessarily call myself a journalist yet because I've been at The Guardian for about 3 years, and prior to that was very much just a software engineer. I'm learning about journalism. I feel like I'm some kind of alien observer in the world of journalism in some respects. But yeah, I think I'm kind of trying to find ways to facilitate journalism. But I'm probably more of a facilitator than a journalist myself.
Well, I'm not sure I would agree, actually. I think what you do is journalism, but I think we could discuss that.
The same for me. I am a computer scientist, and I don't code, but I understand data, and I find data as a convergence point between lots of skills. So that's a new opportunity for journalism, but I'm not a journalist, so that's why.
So what you're seeing is data people coming, or people coming from the code side, from the technology side, journalists coming to the technology side. You're seeing an interesting convergence, both on this panel and in the industry. Brian, why do you think that's important?
Okay. Because what we're doing is useful. I mean, golly, I don't know. Why do I think it's important in what context? Like,
why do you think it's? Where do you think this is taking the industry? Why do you think this is? What's changing? I mean, that's I think has been emphatically pointed out. We've been doing data analysis for years, maybe decades. We've been involving data in our journalism for decades. What's different about this? What we're talking about right now?
Well, there's mountains of data available at this point, right? You know, I guess one of the rants that I've been getting on. I might be borrowing one from you that our friend Derek Willis of the New York Times gets excited about, is about just the sheer quantities of data that is available to, let's say, I don't know, the Obama campaign or Philip Morris or somebody, and they have data scientists on staff. They have really, really smart, incredibly well-paid data analysts, quantitative sociologists. There are lots of names for these people, and they're using that data to sell you cigarettes or to get their candidate elected, and we don't know how to do that. I'm not a data scientist. I'm a programmer who knows how to work with databases and is slowly learning how to tell stories. I don't think anybody on this panel would call themselves a data scientist, and I don't think I know a single data scientist who works in journalism. It's a problem. It's a gap, and we have to. We've all got to up our games, and we've also, as an industry, have to bring in a lot more people that do that sort of work because we're ignorant.
I would add something to that, which is at this conference, Strata, I spoke at last year, which is a data science conference. There was actually a lot of attention paid to what journalists could bring to them, because the one thing I think that flows through everything that we've been talking about today is the ability to find the stories, to find a headline. I mean, every time we start a piece, we sit down and before we go any further, we have to know what the headline is. You know, so this is something I was saying to Brian yesterday that we're going to be like the crystal reports of the big data world. But yeah, journalists, I think, are increasingly.
That was a joke, by the way.
Yeah, sorry, it was a bad joke.
But yeah, enterprise programming joke, actually.
I want to add something to that. I mean, I'm going to make a comparison between journalism, what is going on in journalism, and what's going on in science. If you take a look at scientific papers from 20 years ago, you only had, one author or two authors per paper. If you take a look at scientific paper today, you will see that each paper is authored by 16 people. And what that means is that the world is growing more complex we have more complexity to deal with. And our work as journalists is to make sense of that complexity. But for making sense of that complexity, we have to bring together skills from many different areas. That's what's going on right now in the newsrooms. You need programmers, you need data scientists, you need information visualizers and designers and pure journalists, and you have to bring them together and to try to, to make sense of the world for your readers or for your audiences, or help them make sense of the world in some sense by creating tools that will allow them to do that. I think that that's the main difference between the past and the present.
And let me add one more community to that, and I think, Angelica, you mentioned this, who are outside of your newsroom, not as much mine, unfortunately. Ben's, absolutely. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how newsrooms need to reach out beyond the four walls of the newsroom.
We are engaging with these communities in the local level in Buenos Aires. I recommend we go to hackathons. Last Saturday I was in one. I went to 4 or 5 hackathons, Sundays, Saturdays. And if you want to learn, you have to go and try to understand and self-teach yourself. This is very important because who are there are programmers, are data scientists, are people who want to help, but they don't perhaps understand the business or the content you know as journalists. So this is very important to work in teams and to find the other part that you need and ask.
Ben, you guys have done a lot of crowdsourcing projects. You've reached out to the community extensively. Why have you chosen to do that, and what value do you think this brings in particular to your reporting?
Well, for one, it's a lot of fun, which is a good start. But I just think for instance, with the neighborhoods project we did, we knew there are no official boundaries. It's a long time disputed thing in the city of Los Angeles. So at the outset, we knew that there would be no right answers. It's not like the LA Times could draw the lines and they would be perfect. If if that was possible, you might try. But we had the humility, I guess, at the outset to admit that, and that's where bringing in the outside made it, a lot more credible, I think, to our audience, and it resulted in a better product.
So 10 years from now, I'm curious, this is a toss-up question for the panel. 10 years from now, what's a newsroom going to look like?
Oh, fuck.
Okay,
Much
five
smaller.
years from now.
Much smaller.
Much smaller. Questions, yeah.
Yeah, though hopefully leveraging technology in much more efficiently than I do, but in that same department to get stuff done. There's this old maxim that's much maligned in newsrooms: do more with less. We've just laid everybody off, but we're going to do more with less. It was parodied by David Simon on The Wire in the season he did there, and it's bullshit. I mean, it's a lie. It's not true. You can't, in most cases. But there is one hope in that department, which is through software, technology, open source projects like MISO project, we can lower the barrier and increase our efficiency in how we work with stuff. And that really is one of the few ways you really can do more with what you have, or sometimes, hopefully not less, but.
Cool. All right, so we have people lined up. Why don't we start over here?
Hi, my name is Rosellen Downey, and my question is for Ben. I was curious with the LA Times. I lived and worked in LA for 5 years in the entertainment industry, and the entertainment industry is obviously prevalent in LA, and I was wondering what you do with data relating to the entertainment industry and data mining that for the readership there.
Well, we just, this year before the Academy Awards, did a data-based investigation thing where we published for the first time ever an analysis of the members of the Academy. This was a data project we did where we were essentially leaked a list. Am I allowed to say this? Yeah, we were essentially leaked a list of people who are in the Academy, which is secret. And then through a very tedious process, we set up an internal database that had reporters then individually verifying the people, collecting their age, race, and gender, and then using that to do an analysis that found that the Academy is, surprise, surprise, overwhelmingly old, white, and male.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Gerald Rich. Another toss-up question for you guys. What was your hardest hack?
People.
Skepticism.
Yeah.
In the newsroom, yeah, I would say skepticism sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, hack like a project that you guys like.
Sorry, a project.
Yeah, sorry.
All right. Well, in the one that I showed, I mean, it's just very basic. The data was in a website. the project about the phone numbers and phone calls and stuff. The thing is that, well, we talked a little bit about open data here and open data laws, and Brazil has one. But the thing is that the government is forced to release data, but it's not forced to release data in a usable format. So they don't only release things in PDFs, they do that, but they also release it in websites, and then you phone them and say, give me access to your database so I can get your data, and say, that is dangerous. You should not do that. So you're basically forced to hack them sometimes and get the data yourself. That's the main challenge that we faced over there. It doesn't happen here in the US, but it does happen also in Spain, where I'm from.
I'll throw one more thing into this. I'm a professional software developer, leading a team of professional software developers. Making software is easy. We like it. It's what we do for fun. It's the editing that's hard. It's the journalism that's hard. It's figuring out what to name that column. It's figuring out when to use a map and when not to use a map. It's making the right software is very difficult and requires many of the same thought processes as editing a regular story.
I'll quickly come back to the subject of dealing with big data. We did a project just before Christmas, which was a pretty nerve-wracking one in that we had to get a sort of mixed team of academics who were all very talented data scientists to understand a 3-week deadline, which was kind of a little bit foreign to them. But we basically had 2.5 million tweets, which pretty much covered the entire of the period of the London riots last year. And with the help of the academics, we were able to analyze those. And in that 3-week period, we also devised a way of then basically playing back the evolution of certain rumors through Twitter. And I think that was a very hard project from kind of every angle, not least that a lot of the things I was showing earlier were originally done with Flash. That's actually a pretty mature set of tools for doing animated interactive visuals. And having to now start building those things with open standards has been a real challenge. And I won't go into all the details, but doing something that's kind of as complex as what we would previously build in Flash in 3 weeks is a stretch.
Question over here.
I'm curious about, bringing together traditional journalists and traditional technologists. And I really see that that's what we're talking about here. We're talking a crossover. Is it, on your teams, do you have more technologists or do you have more journalists, or who do you bring to the table?
So our team, unusual for this field, is made of almost all people who were programmers first and then found journalism, either because they believed in the mission or the religion of it, or they wanted to make things they could show their mom. No, really, we have to make an emotional appeal to hire software developers to come work in this stupid business. But I love it.
I think we are more journalists than technologists, as I've said, but from the technology side, you have to find the people who value data, doing things, building things, discovering knowledge, sharing data as a way of innovation, and that they have a different motivation. I know different technology profiles, and the ones who feel something for this, they are not so easy to find, and just like changing the world a little bit. That's what we want them to feel, and this is how we engage him. So that's it.
In my case, in the team that I used to lead until December last year, it was one jack of all trades, which was me, journalist, as you know, and graphic designer also, but above all, a journalist. 4 graphic designers, infographics designers, and 2 developers. We hired 2 developers in the last year that I was there, and it was a huge change for us.
Our team is called the Data Desk, and it sort of exists more in our imagination than in the org chart. We don't really have a boss. We all work for different departments, but we're a crazy team, and that includes the kind of older computer-assisted reporting team that preceded a lot of the internet work. That's Doug Smith, data analyst, Sandra Poindexter. They write in SAS and do classic census, old school car stuff. Malloy Moore, who's a converted librarian, who does a lot of work for us too, cleaning data, working with data. She's getting better. She's learned some Django. and then myself and Ken Schwenke, who are sort of journalism school students converted into computer programmers. And if you want to become one of those people, you could do what I did, which is go to the University of Missouri and the National Institute for Computer Assisted Reporting. Big up your chest. It's called NICAR. And that's they have a graduate program, and that's a great way to spend some time doing real journalism and real programming at the same time and meet everybody in the field and get plugged in. I'd recommend it.
So I've got 7 people on my team, and I could tell you about the fact that we have a more or less half and half male-female split. I could also tell you about the fact that we embrace a number of ethnicities, including cyberpunk. But I want to tell you what actually brings it, and also in terms of skills, we've got developers, we've got journalistic backgrounds, and we've got a wonderfully spirited Portuguese lady called Mariana, who is just a kind of force of nature. But what brings everyone on the team together is the fact that everybody is very pragmatic. Everybody is capable of seeing the Guardian campaign this year is all about the whole picture. But everyone on my team is capable of looking at the kind of whole of a story that we're trying to get to, and not letting details bog us down or get in our way. We tend to try and move quite fast, and having everybody able to just find a new way of doing something at kind of like last minute notice is pretty important.
Thank you. I'm Rasmus Nelson from the Reuters Institute at the University of Oxford. So one very quick question and then a slightly longer one. The quick one is, does anyone of you know whether the things you're engaged in actually make money for the company that you work for? And then the second one, which sort of feeds off that one, is many of you come from organizations that dedicate large amounts of resources to what you're doing. What do you think are the takeaways for smaller newsrooms, which are the newsrooms of the future, but also most of the newsrooms of today cannot assign 14 people, cannot run a website like The Guardian, amazing as it is. That is a loss-making website. I think The Guardian lost £40 million last year. 20% operating loss is not a very attractive proposition for most news organizations. So I think we all appreciate the value of what you're doing, that you're doing amazing, innovative work, but I suppose that there are 2 questions. One, what is the business of this? And what are the takeaways from organizations who don't have the kind of resources that the great newspapers and great news organizations that you represent have to dedicate to this?
I think that I'm going to get started with that. I don't have a good answer for the first one. I don't think that anyone in this room has a good answer for the first question. But I guess that one thing that it can be brought to the table by this kind of journalism is that you can bring attention to your own organizations, but doing things that nobody else is doing out there. But that's not a very good answer. The second question I can answer, and the thing is that you can do very good data journalism, and Angelica addressed that in her presentation, by using Excel and Illustrator. That's what I do. I'm not a good programmer. I know a little bit about programming, a little bit of JavaScript, ActionScript, but I'm not a good programmer. 90% of my work as an infographics designer and an information visualizer is done in Excel and Illustrator. I usually call that low-tech visualization. And in fact, one of the things that I do in my courses at the University of Miami at the beginning of each semester is to try to take out the fear that students have for this kind of journalism. And I basically tell them, you don't really need to have very deep computer skills to do this kind of journalism, because it's about the story, it's about storytelling and extracting stories from the data. And you can do that with pen and paper sometimes. Of course, if you know programming, that can help, and that will help down the road. But at the very beginning, Excel and Illustrator, and that's it. So that's what small newsrooms can do. Start investing in tools that are easy to learn, easy to understand, and Angelica mentioned some of them: Tableau, Excel, Illustrator, things that can be learned very fast and can be very effective. And down the road, you can learn the advanced stuff that the New York Times does, or the Guardian does, or everybody else in this panel does.
My personal opinion is that all these new small startup newsrooms, if they want to have big impact and do investigative work that makes a difference, they need to have at least one person who's a specialist at doing data analysis for investigative work. I can't tell you that our methods have a track record of making a lot of money, but I can tell you they have a track record of getting great stories and kicking ass. And so if your goal, even if you're like a nonprofit, is to kick ass, you should have somebody who can do this stuff.
Brian? Sorry.
I'm going to run this calculation when I get back to the newsroom so I can answer this definitively, but I feel that if you I feel that our team, man-hour-wise, produces just as many page views as any other team in the news organization. So the page views divided by man-hour number, I think our ratio is probably pretty solid compared to the rest of the newsroom. Does that make us any money? No, because our whole business model is broken, right? So, I'm not going to take the blame for that.
Right. Yeah, and if you're just talking about page views, you can say like the homicide blog that we do, we automate all these blog posts that come out and then just do a minor amount of work to clean them up. So the actual time it takes to make the blog is next to zero, but nobody's going to buy ads.
Sorry, just on the business side of thing, it's true that the old model is broken, but it's not everything that's equally broken. And I think that's an important distinction, whether you're throwing away a lot of money or losing a little bit of money. I mean,
Right.
from the point of view of the business.
Yeah.
Right. Angelica, did you have something to add?
We really think this is innovation, and this is the business for this is to stay in the business. This is the raw material of the future, and this is the audience is there. So these data applications will transform into mobile services, and so you can demand more information directly from your news organization or from your data provider. We think we're convinced this is directly related to innovation and growth.
Can I ask a heretical question on that topic? So we did the Academies project. And so the LA Times, like on my computer, not that one, but a different one, we have the exclusive list of everyone who's in the Motion Pictures Academy. No one else has it outside of the Academy. You could probably sell that, right? People who want to market their movie for the awards. Hey, I want to send a package to everybody in the Academy to let them know to vote for, for Kate Winslet or whatever. If the business people came to me, which they haven't, and said, hey, let's sell it, should I do it?
No. Oh, sorry.
Hi, my name is Carla, and I thought about this question when I was looking at Angelica's data and Ben's data. What do you all do to make sure the data that you are reporting or portraying is accurate, understandable, and not taken out of context?
Anyone?
Our data is taken from official public records. So this doesn't mean that the data is accurate, but that's somewhere we start with, because before we had nothing.
Okay.
So that's it.
Okay, so anybody else very, very quickly?
Yeah, I mean, there are data that you cannot see if it's true or not because it's from official sources, and many times, official sources are not accurate, but that's what you have to deal with, and that happens every day in journalism. The other thing that you can do, and that is done by everybody, is that every time that you have the opportunity to talk with an expert about the data that you have in your hands, that's what you do. So you run a data analysis yourself. And we did that with education stories in Brazil when I was there. So we did a story about education in Brazil, and we ran the data, we analyzed the data, and once we had the graphic ready, we showed the graphics and the data to specialists in education to contrast what we have to tell, and to make sure that the story that we have in our hands was reliable. So that's what you have to do. It's very basic answer, but that's what journalists do all the time.
Super quick question over here.
Sure. Yesterday we heard about how journalism is becoming more democratic through the online medium, how pretty much everybody can create content and publish it, put it out there for everybody. What you guys are talking about today is how journalism is becoming much more specialized, that you need to have very special skills to be able to do that. So do you see a dichotomy there, and how does it play out for the future of democratic journalism via online?
Alistair?
So in response to that, and also going back to the previous question, which was about the way that we can share what we do, or the way that organizations like ours are perhaps privileged. I'll get another plug-in for our MISO project. I think what we're trying to do there is democratize data journalism. I think we're trying to show the way that we do things, and we're trying to make it so that every piece we publish ultimately will be something that anybody can take as a starting point for their own piece.
I mean, that's kind of the point of the Show Your Work t-shirt, right? We blog, we explain how we did the data stories, We release with the code with documentation so people can go build their own sort of work like ours, and we release the data sets for every single thing we publish. So we're trying to spread this thing out. We're trying to train both our peers in the industry and also the public about how to do this stuff.
Okay, Rosenthal's going to yank us off stage. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. This was fabulous, fantastic, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. But before the coffee, we have the prizes of today. So we have for